It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, June 26th. Your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that's talking more Michkov madness and a former Flyer selected for the Hockey Hall of Fame.
It's a loaded day.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You could find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. You can find us over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. You'll get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, the Flyers are starting to get a little cheeky out there with all this Michkov stuff. Kind of leaning into the, I would say, like sort of mustache twirling era for Danny Briere, which is really fun.
Although I'm not sure he could grow one, but yes.
I don't know either. That is a very good point. But of course, the images and video from the pre-draft presser when asked about Michkov have been going around for days, and people reading into it with all this news. And the Flyers social media is leaning into it. We'll put a link to that post in the show notes if you haven't seen it. But what we did get as of recording of this episode and as an official post from Michkov's KHL team in St. Petersburg that the contract was terminated. Which it had not been done officially as of yet. We just kind of knew it was happening. Right. And we got a statement from Michkov himself, which is unusual. Like, we haven't really heard much from him directly, but, it was a statement thanking the KHL team, but, thanking management, thanking coaches, players, staffs, but that, he wants to try his hand at the NHL. And I think, it was a good statement, but it's just, I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
Well, I mean, everybody has a right to be excited. I'm excited to see what he can do too. I think there'll be some really good play out of him. I just, I don't think he's going to be Connor Bedard this year, and I'm not going to put that pressure on him. There's already some media members, like on radio, I would say, in Philly that are already doing that, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, we talked a lot about how to make Michkov's transition a success on yesterday's show. If you haven't listened to it, you should go back and do that. And I think, our kind of watchword was like excited but patient. And I think that's the right way to approach it. But you can't help but get excited, that a kid who has so much potential is coming sooner than we thought. Of course, we don't have that ELC yet, but maybe it's done as of, after we recorded this, but we will follow that for sure.
I don't think it's done because if you read the wording, they said they're looking forward to talking to his people, and so they haven't even done that, and they wrote in the coming days because it is a busy time with the draft and everything. So that's why I think he'll show up by the end of August. If they, somehow he gets a quicker visa, maybe the middle, but he's not going to make the rookie stuff or any of that. I think he'll just be there when regular camps around, but I think he'll get there like maybe, 4 weeks before, and he'll have a chance to at least be shown around Philly and get an apartment and all that kind of stuff, or live with somebody or something.
Yeah. I just, you could read so much into we are certainly excited to learn of this news and look forward to reconnecting with Matvei, the way it sounded in my head. Like, it was just.
Yeah, to me, it was like AI. Like, that to me was like an AI statement.
But like in the best way possible. Like, that was like the biggest wink, nod and wink, moment of that statement for sure, which I certainly appreciated as much as they are certainly excited to learn of this news just now. Yes, just now. But so we will have more Michkov coverage as that continues. We have not had a chance to talk about the Stanley Cup final, and a Flyers goalie tandem won the Stanley Cup in Florida with Sergei Bobrovsky and Anthony Stolarz, and congrats to them most specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I played a media volleyball game against Nick Cousins and Anthony Stolarz, and the funny story on that is Stolarz was unbelievable. By the way, he was so tall he could serve from anywhere and kill you, and he could spike from anywhere and kill you because he just was so tall and rangy. But this is probably like when I was 50, and I was playing up front next to where Nick Cousins was on the other side, and we both went up for a contested ball, and we knocked into each other. And like the security goes up to Nick Cousins and says, "Hey, are you okay?" And I'm like, what about me? I'm like an old guy here. He's a hockey player. Don't worry about this guy. But yeah, that's you see those guys here, you cover them. You're happy for them. I'm especially happy for Bob because he was getting too much crap, for lack of a better word. He really was. He's a great goalie. Yes, there was a time where his play dipped, and maybe you could question whether he was worth the money, but there's nobody questioning that anymore. Nobody did last year either. Like he was on this path. He wasn't going to be denied. Uh, I even felt he should have gotten more second and third place votes. He didn't get enough of them in my mind, but that's okay.
For the Conn Smythe.
For the Conn Smythe, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, which of course went to Connor McDavid, who was...
Yes. Which I have no problem with that.
Yeah, it was just awkward. I mean, there's a reason why they don't often vote for somebody from the losing team for the
Conn he was never going to come out of the locker room. No. Anybody who expected that is ridiculous. Like, that's ridiculous.
No, I don't think anybody expected him to come out.
There were some people on Twitter that were making a thing of it, but again.
Yeah, I would say of all the post cup celebrations that happened, I was most emotionally affected by Paul Maurice lifting the cup. He's just been around for so long, and to like finally get a cup, like you could just see it in his. I just started bawling because I was like, this man has worked so hard. And
yeah, I mean, I didn't get that emotional, but I was happy. But when he said "F yeah," it brought me back to that animated movie Air America, where that was like their slogan in the movie. If people don't know it, go look it up on YouTube. It's a pretty funny movie. So yeah, it reminded me of that. But he was entertaining the whole time. Every time they would interview him about the power play, he'd be like, yeah, they're just, these calls are all going against us, we're used to it. Like, he just, everything was like matter of factly to him. But the big thing, the takeaway in that game, there was two things. The first one was Florida was never behind, so I really never worried that they were going to lose. And I feel like Knobloch did gas his guys too early in the third period, because by the time they pulled Skinner, nobody had any legs, all their top guys.
Yeah, they waited too long.
But they should have rested them before they did it, because they kept double and triple shifting them. And it's like, humans do need rest, even Connor McDavid. And they were gassed, completely gassed. And, I know other people would say, oh, you would have been ripping them if you didn't. I would have been like, no, I mean, there's only so much you could play a guy down the stretch. But by the time they got the puck, Florida just controlled the puck. It was easy. Like, there was nothing. There was no fight from Edmonton to get that tying goal. Now, there was for 3/4 of the period, but not when they had the extra attacker, and that kind of stinks.
Yeah. Yeah, they absolutely ran out of gas there. It was kind of a shame for them on that front, but a very good game 7 nonetheless. Didn't go to overtime, but still a very, very
It was a great series. I mean, that game 7 was like, I was just like holding my breath at times. It was just like, what's going on here? It was tense.
As far as the Flyers go, that means the Flyers will definitely be picking at 32, which
we've said that all along. Yeah.
Right. But now it's officially official.
And I've been saying, with all they should have just let these guys have the parade, right? They didn't need to be there first day. They could have just let them show up late to the draft the next day, because the Flyers had their pick anyhow. Just give them the day.
Sure. I wonder if their table will even have people there on table.
It will. But if they didn't need to, though, that's the point.
That is true. As a side note, the Hershey Bears won the Calder Cup for the second year in a row, which is
not surprising.
Super annoying to me, but not surprising. But our old pal Matt Strome got the game-winning goal in the series to clinch it. So congrats to him as well.
Yeah, that's a guy, he's really been, you know, trying the whole time. He's been staying at what he does, what he loves. He's not going to be an NHLer, but this is a big deal. You win a championship of any kind, it's a big deal. So I'm really happy for him because he's a great guy.
Yeah. As far as other NHL goings on, there have been more trades this week. And I think the one that intrigued me the most was the Sens Bruins trade, where
Yeah,
Ullmark went to the Sens. And I mention it because I do think there's an effect on the Flyers here because the Sens traded away the second first round pick. They have the lower pick
right.
as part of this deal to get Allmark. And so I do think that affects the Flyers' ability to do a deal with the Sens because now they only have the one pick in the first round. And would they be willing to move down, or would a deal involve the Flyers' lower pick now? I think that it does put a little wrench in any potential deal there.
I think it does. I mean, I think Boston fans were hoping they were getting Chikrin and were shocked maybe at the return. I think the Sens did well here. I don't know if Allmark's signing there. If you ask me now, I'd say he probably isn't. But this gives them a chance to make the playoffs, and I think that's what they need more than anything. So I get why it's done. I don't get it so much from the Boston end, and from the Flyers end. Yeah, I mean, there's two things. Ottawa could just kill all trades now and say, we're going with this team. We're trying to make the playoffs. If Chikrin walks, he walks. Or if we're not in the playoffs, we'll trade him at the deadline. They may just go with that now. Like everything
Yeah.
may just be dead. And so that you may be right on that.
Yeah, we'll see. But that was my initial thought there. A former Philadelphia Flyers player, amongst other teams, is now going to be a member of the Hockey Hall of Fame in Jeremy Roenick. We're going to talk about him and the rest of the 2024 class coming up next.
Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your parts guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts that you need, prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
On tomorrow's show, we are going to have our final draft eligible prospect look into some guys, as well as looking at some of the big picture parts of the draft upcoming on
I'm going to give you a
Friday.
teaser on that one. One of them tried a New York bagel for the first time.
Wow, that's exciting for them.
Yeah, I mean, think about
All
it.
right. Looking at the Hockey Hall of Fame class for this year, it is super interesting. So, in the player category, we had two first-time eligible nominees get in Pavel Datsyuk and Shea Weber, along with Jeremy Roenick on the men's side. And we had two women get in, which is extremely unusual
It
and
is.
very good to see. Who they are is very intriguing in Chrissy Wendell-Pohl and Natalie Darwitz. And we'll get into that. But of course, we got to start with Jeremy Roenick. And I am very surprised.
Yeah. So first thing I want to say is I'm really unhappy for Alexander McGillney. You can't have other Russians getting into the Hall of Fame without him. I have the interview. I have two interviews with Bob Swatos, who helped get him out of Russia into Buffalo and become a Buffalo Sabre. And maybe I need to play those again so people would understand, and people on the board would understand how he risked his life to play North American hockey. And he, without him, none of these other guys would have had the chance. And so it's like, I just don't understand how he can't get in. And I'm really unhappy about this, especially now. Not that Datsyuk doesn't deserve it. Of course he does. But you can't put one without the other. That's my problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think no question Shea Weber and Pavel Datsyuk are
Oh yeah.
both worthy guys to get in. Pavel Datsyuk, especially, I think, was a no-brainer to me. Especially as somebody who had to watch the Flyers get swept by those Red Wings that were so good. Um, I just you cannot help but respect Pavel Datsyuk and his
Yeah,
game.
look, I think the Shea Weber offer sheet should be in the Hall of Fame.
I know, right? Do we count him as a former Flyer in this conversation?
If Arizona counts Chris Pronger, then yeah, it depends.
Okay. Okay. We can we can absolutely do that. As far as Jeremy Roenick goes, I think, you look at his career and most of it was in Chicago, but he had 3 years with the Flyers organization. And he was part of that early 2000s team, and which was a tough time but a fun time, I think, for that team.
Yeah, so I covered that. I covered the series against the Leafs. Uh,
Mhm.
I was covering that year. I switched over from Rangers coverage to Flyers coverage, and Roenick was really fun to talk to in that series. He was getting into it a little with Ty Domi. I was going back and forth. They were having like a little war of words, and I was having fun writing about it. And so, I definitely would remember that. And if you read his book, you find out that he was like 155 pounds going into the NHL draft, and they hid his weight. Like his agent would not say how much he weighed. It's not like they had a combine back then. They didn't. So you really could do that. So yeah, he's had a long career, and we know about the other stuff. And I guess the other stuff didn't matter.
Yeah, I guess so, but with, over 1,200 points in his NHL
Great
career,
American player, like one of the best ever.
yeah, I guess, like, from a stats perspective, it was hard to deny, and he played for some really good teams and some really terrible teams, and so, you think maybe there could have been more to his career if he had played on some better teams as well, but
The one that
yeah,
needs
I
to get in now that was on like the Olympic team with him, I believe, and another great player from that same era is Keith Kachuk. We saw him last night in the stands. He, why isn't he in? He's got 500 and something, like 534 goals. Like, what are we doing
yeah.
here?
Yeah. Looking at the 2 women, Chrissy Wendell
Yeah,
Pohl and Natalie Darwitz, man, Natalie Darwitz is having a weird, weird
a
year in
weird
the
year.
best in the best worst way. She, of course, both first of all, both of these players are American. So the fact that they elected to vote 2 women in, again, almost never happens. Both of them are American, so there isn't a Canadian here. Jennifer Botterill weeps silently in the corner.
Not
And
silently. No, no, no. Let's not
well,
be silent. I know
yeah,
you
I
say that
know.
tongue in cheek, but it's like she was a superstar. Like, what are you
Yeah,
people doing?
I
Like, there's
know.
nobody else should have gotten in before her. And I like Natalie Darwitz a lot. I've covered her,
Yeah.
but again, this is Jennifer Botterill. What are we doing here?
Yeah, and the fact that both of these American women got in before Megan Duggan, I guess they're trying to, like, make up for the years past where they haven't used the
Probably.
2 slots for women, so they're kind of going more in chronological order, looking back a little further, and that's really the explanation I'm gonna say for these 2, but Natalie Darwitz also was the GM of the PWHL, uh, Cup winning team, Minnesota, before she left the organization soon thereafter. So she created the team that won the first PWHL Cup, as well as
Which is
being
a
an
big
excellent
deal.
player in her own right for all those years. Both of these players played at
Well,
the
here's the
University of
thing. I'm going to say
Minnesota.
it. Right. I'm going to say this. She's getting in as a player right now. Down the line, maybe she should be getting in as a builder too.
Yeah, could be. Could be. Chrissy Wendell Pohl also played for University of Minnesota, also on the USA national team for many, many years. She's currently a scout with the Pittsburgh Penguins. So she has continued her
Yeah, yeah.
hockey career as well in a really interesting way. So I love both these women. I'm so happy for them. Absolutely deserved. Just a very odd selection for this particular year, given some of the oversights that have happened in the past. But these two deserved it eventually, no matter what. So you can't complain.
And David Poile, David Poile is a great guy. He's been in this
For the
sport
builders.
for the builders. He's been in this sport forever, so that makes sense. And Colin Campbell's he's like a fixture at the NHL. He may not have been a great coach. Ranger fans would appreciate that, but he still he deserves to be in.
Yeah, so those were your two builders, and yeah, David Poile. It was a no-brainer that was going to happen.
It's a first ballot for him. Like,
yeah,
I don't know if there's ever been a first ballot builder. Like that's because
that's a good point.
Category.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah,
I don't know either. But a very fascinating but good Hockey Hall of Fame class.
Yeah, I'm just mad. I'm mad about McGillney. This is all the coverage I plan on giving. I'm really not going to give them any more coverage until McGillney gets in.
That is a bold statement. A bold statement.
That's it. I'm no more retweets or anything. Done.
All right. Well, let that be a lesson, Hockey Hall of Fame, to get Alexander McGillney in the Hockey Hall of Fame to get Russ's affections back. Love to see that. All right. You have some excellent mailbag questions in our last mailbag before the NHL draft. We are going to get to them coming up next. It's summer, which always makes me think of baseball, and especially with the Phillies being a ton of fun this season, I want to be there in person as much as possible. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, views from your seat, and their low price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying those coveted MLB tickets in your town, summer concerts, and more. My favorite part of the Game Time app is that it's great for getting notified about those last-minute flash deals. Plus, they let you save even more with zone deals, where you pick a section and let Game Time choose the seat for you. Best of all, they have all-in pricing, so there's no surprise fees at checkout, and your tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through email. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. It is our last mailbag before the draft, as I said, and I think we had a lot of questions and comments on our YouTube channel related to our Dream Pick episode, which we did last week, and it was really like, if crazy things happened and a player falls into your lap, but we don't really think they'll be available, would we pick them? And then on the other side, is there somebody that would be a reach pick for us that really should go later in the draft, but we think the Flyers could maybe take a gander on it? So there's some questions and comments around that. So Brian said, if this is a very deep draft for defensemen, then why get one early? If there's a run on D early, they could use that to get an elite forward. Look at what possibly happened with the Eagles draft.
Okay, but football's different. These guys are fully formed guys that come into the league and are ready to play. These players are not. Now, I understand what you're saying on the surface, but the problem is with those first 10, 11 picks, you're getting top pairing guys who could play a number 3. After that, you're not. And probably by the time they pick again, you're not even getting a number 4. You're hoping you're getting a 4, but you're probably getting a 5 or a 6. That's why. That's the delineation.
Right. And when we did our mock draft show and talked about who we picked in the Locked On NHL mock draft, when we talked about defensemen, because we picked 2 forwards in that mock draft. And the reason why we did that is because the tiers of defensemen in terms of skill level, the Flyers pick was just in between tiers, that it would have been a reach to pick a defenseman that we thought was lower, but all the ones that we would have picked at that point were gone already. And for the most part. So that's kind of why we did what we did. And that's really what this comment is getting at here, right?
Yes.
We just, in that sweet spot, there wasn't the right defenseman to pick.
Correct.
So that's kind of what we did with our dream picks there as well. There were also multiple commenters, at least 3, that I saw wanting the Flyers to get Berkeley Catton as far as, a dream pick, like if he could fall into the Flyers' lap, or the Flyers trying to trade up to get him. And so, what do we think the Flyers would have to do to get him in this draft?
Yeah, I think if it's going to be obvious that he's either going to go at 10 or 11, then you offer a second round pick to Buffalo or New Jersey and get your guy. Like if that's who they want and they want to get him there, I think that's how you can get him. I think he'll be there. Not guaranteed, obviously, because if, let's say, Calgary doesn't get Iginla, they may turn their affections to the Berkeley Catton. But still, somewhere in that range, that's what you got to do.
Yeah, I think so. I think, honestly, I'm waiting until after Calgary's pick. If Tisha Ginla is still on the board when Calgary is on the clock, then I start
Sure, but that's a big if.
because
Yeah.
that's a big if. But I think ultimately I wait till Calgary's pick and then I try and get a deal, because you only have to move up to 9 at that point, right? And so I think a deal is doable. But I don't think, if you think you need to pick him higher than like Calgary or higher, I don't know that the Flyers have the right assets in terms of giving up too much.
Like as an example, and this probably won't happen, but if you hear Utah wants him, or what are they at 6? You're not doing that.
No, that's moving up too high. You'll have to give up too much to get there. And that's why I think you could move up to 9 at the highest.
Right. I agree.
John commented on my pick of Jet Luchenko, saying that he's a dog, DAWG, that is. Flyers should trade up from the Florida pick to land him, high skill and elite compete level. I'd even consider trading down from 12 depending on the offer. And like trading up from the Florida pick to get him, I'm in, depending on what the deal is, right? I think he's that kind of guy. But what do you think, Russ?
Yeah, look, Luchenko surprised me with the kind of shape that he's in. Like he was much bigger and thicker than I thought he was. He's a good playmaker. I still kind of think he's an early second rounder. There are some people that love him, like this guy, and other people like scouts I know, and then there's others that are like lukewarm to him. So I have to be careful here. If they got the defenseman on the first pick, and then Luchenko's still there at 16, 17, still a lot of spots you got to get up there from 32. Now, I don't think in any way, shape, or form the Flyers should trade down. 12 is a good spot. Do not trade down. It does matter. I do think quality of players does matter going down from 12. So I wouldn't do that. But yeah, there might be some room in this world to do what he wants, and I wouldn't be against it. It's just that, we'll see how he does in his career, but he's a good player. I don't know how good yet. He kind of is one of those tricky ones for me. But yeah, John's not completely off on this at all. I mean, there's some substance to this.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that, man, this draft is going to be so interesting. Like our team's going to move around and to get different guys, and are the Flyers going to be a part of that? That's a lot of what we're going to talk about on tomorrow's show. So stay tuned for that. We had sort of one non-draft related question that I thought was super interesting from John. What would you think about changing the cap rules so that drafted player salaries do not count against the cap? Maybe that's just for ELCs, and after UFA status, it's a 50% hit. Once a player leaves the organization, even if they return later, it's back to a full cap hit. It might encourage teams to put more focus on development and help keep teams together. What do you think?
I'm not against it. I'm not. It still doesn't account for, though, like the college players. You don't have to have them signed. You don't have to have the guys overseas signed if you don't want to. So really, it's mainly for the guys in the Canadian Hockey League, mostly. But yeah, I'm not against it.
Well, but you still draft those college players, right?
Yeah, but they don't cost you anything. There's zero cost to your cap with those guys. They don't sign anything. They don't cost you anything.
Right, but they do once they do sign. And
I get it.
Saying that it would still only be like a 50% cap hit for those guys
Well,
because you drafted them.
okay. So if I misunderstood a part of it, then the problem with that is whatever the salary is, 1.6, whatever it is that, the ELC thing is, the Players Association would never do it. They never do it
Why not?
because I just don't think they would be in favor of it. I can't get in the headspace right now. Why not? But again, why are we doing this for teams? Like, to me, teams need to face the cap head on, and cap dollars should be the real cap dollars, and you should be able to handle it and take care of it like that. Like, there shouldn't be any kind of, well, let's help teams out and spend more money, because like it's not about that. Otherwise, the league will be back to where they were 10 years ago when the Flyers and Rangers were trying to outspend everybody and not win anything.
Yeah, I think there is a point to be made there in terms of the cap exists for a reason, and it creates a limit on spending. And, I think the parameters create some structure around the league. I don't think I'm opposed to like a small discount, like a 10% discount on the
Okay,
salary, like
10%
something
I can do.
small.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think that's where I land on this because it keeps the major structure, but like it accounts for it's not really a hometown discount as much as the team that drafted you discount, where the players get a little bit more money and they have more incentive to stay with the team that drafted them. And
That's fair. I like
yeah,
that codicil. Is that the word? Maybe, I don't know. I like that
caveat.
caveat. Thank you. Yeah, I like that addition. I think that makes it good. So I think between the two of you, that makes sense. The only other thing I want to add is, if you want to have the best player development in the league, go ahead. You could spend more than anybody. That's uncapped money. All that front office money on player development, you could spend as much as you want. And if the Flyers want to spend the most in the league, they could spend the most in the league. They could have the top notch everything. They could have all the best people. They could have 10 people working in player development if they want. Any team can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Very interesting question, though. I think it's definitely a fun mental exercise to consider. That will do it for today's show. We will be back tomorrow with our big picture NHL draft preview and our last prospect profiles. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you want to have your question answered on the show, let us know on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube that's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Have a great day, everyone.